So good evening, Rudi and Jules, and thank you for taking time out of your beautiful life and getting you out of bed somewhat early, clearly, in Hawaii to join us all this evening. Before I go any further and start whittering on about how much I love you and get all mushy and stuff like that, introduce yourselves, please. It would be great.
Hi, well, I'm Rudi, as Billy said, and it's a real honour to be talking with you, Billy. And we filmed Billy about a year ago, and we're going to be putting that up on the 3pmovies.com website, currently hosted on innateevolution.com, so it's a mouthful. And I've been around this understanding, I don't know, since 2004 and loved every minute of it. Over to you.
Beautiful, Rudi. Well, I'm Jules, Rudi's wife, and I'm quite a bit newer to the understanding, but I sort of like to say I fell out of a tree in the back garden of this understanding, and it's just been amazing. I had an experience. I had a series of traumatic events, and then had an experience where I saw thought for what it truly is, and I couldn't wrap words around it, but I felt better. And I wanted so much, and I was attempting to share it with so many people all over the world after my youngest daughter was in her accident, a fatal car accident. And I did the best that I could until I found this understanding, and now I have words to wrap around it. And it's such an honor to help other people help other people.
Yeah. And that's where your career has gone now, for the want of a better description, into the facilitating business. And we'll talk about that a bit again shortly. In your instance, Jules, and you spoke about this, about the impact of this and about the transformation in your life. You know, it's quite a story. It's quite a story. And like I was saying to you before we came on, the whole series has been about pointing people to something within themselves, that no matter how far we appear to be gone in our lives, there's always hope. There's always a way back. The door is never closed. And just as a context of this conversation, Jules, a little bit of history, because I know the story, but the distance from where you were, what you went through, and how just that deep psychological shift, into a kind of a deeper understanding. Give a bit of context, because it's quite the journey.
Well, I was actually homeless. I found myself homeless with the diagnosis. In the United States, we call them diagnosis. I believe in Europe, we call them labels. PTSD or CPTSD, anxiety, depression, and actually a physical manifestation of a heart condition. And so I thought there was no hope for me until after I lost my son to a custody battle. Something shifted. And I remember seeing thought for what it was, but also just looking at my hands and knowing I'm okay. No matter the circumstances, I'm okay. This was in the middle of trial. I go back to court the next day, and I'm just gleaming. I wave at the judge. I hug the opposing party. And I just was so honored to be there. And I knew that everything was going to be okay. Not up here, but it's a non-phonetic communication. It's something from within. It's a feeling that you just know everything's going to be okay. And moving forward, it put me in the best place I could possibly be for the worst thing to happen, and that's losing my daughter. But I stood up in front of 2,000 people at her memorial and spoke to them from this space, using what little language I had to put around it at the time. And at times questioning myself, am I okay? Am I going to fall? But that didn't happen, Billy. 4 years down the road, I meet Rudi, and we just are moving forward from there. And it's such an honor to see how it has affected my life and know that I can facilitate others or guide them back to themselves so that they may also see a shift in themselves and experience a shift in themselves.
When you talk about, you'll say guiding people back to themselves. What does that mean, Julia? What does that mean to you? I have a version of that certainly, but what does it mean to you?
Well, a lot of times when people message me and come to me, they're holding the answer from within, always, always. And it's just being there and listening to them. They begin to slowly uncover it for themselves and answer, oh my goodness, I've answered my own question. Mm-hmm. And that in itself is so liberating. And from there, it just skyrockets. It's a beautiful, it's just a journey that just gains momentum, and they move forward and find such beauty and love within themselves. Find the resilience that is never left. Find the strength that is always there. Yeah. And we just create a space for that.
Yeah. I find it perhaps when I work with my own clients that at the start of a lot of these relationships, when you get into the conversation, you say, well, actually, you are okay. You know, and they kind of go, oh, well, you know, that can't be right. You know, I'm living with this, or I've been through this. How can you say that I'm okay? You know, and it becomes, like you say, the art of listening, the art of slowing down, and to see that it's never about us giving them an answer. Because there is no answer we can give them that will make sense to them. But the answer that they uncover themselves is perfect.
It's perfect.
It's perfect.
Right.
It is perfect. Rudi, you have been a major part of, for myself personally, how I came across the principles, and you provided a resource very early on when you created the Three Principles movies. Can you speak to that, the motivation to that, to why you created that enormous free resource at the time?
Sure. Well, I guess when I came across this, it is myself and about 10 other people and literally the whole of Europe who'd heard about it. And my first teacher, Dr. Roger Mills, was talking about these community projects where one community in America went from the 4th highest homicide rate in the nation to 0 homicides. This has been replicated in different communities as well. And we watch videos of prison inmates where they were just transforming, not just getting clearer minds, but their hearts were opening. They were becoming more compassionate. The violence had stopped. And so I told people about it, and they just didn't believe me. It seemed just remarkable. And so I thought, okay, I need to prove this, because again, back then, there wasn't really any resources you could look at this online. So I went off with an ex-partner at the time, and I filmed all over the world, about 2 years kind of voluntary work to create all of these resources. And I went to those communities where those changes had happened and filmed the policemen and filmed the residents, and I went into the jails and I filmed the inmates. So I just kind of got proof that this is powerful. So all of that went up on my ex-site, threeprinciplesmovies.com, and it's now currently hosted on our current site, innateevolution.com, along with some much newer resources, because I did all of this probably about 10 years ago. So the newer resources, we've got lots of animations and introductory videos for someone who knows nothing about this to go to Start Here on innateevolution.com, and there's a whole 12-part video series, one animation going deeper and deeper and deeper into the understanding. And I think for me, I was a bit like Jules. I was kind of moody, depressed, had panic attacks, really wasn't enjoying life very much. And then there's an experience that happened and I couldn't put it into words. I couldn't articulate it. I didn't know how to translate that into a way that other people could also get benefit and recover and get in touch with that incredible beauty within, but gets covered over by a whole bunch of beliefs and conditioning. And so this kind of allowed me a language, like the ABCs of the human experience. Once I had the language, I could turn it into writings that people could read and understand. So I feel very, very grateful.
Yeah, just before we go to say that, we'll put a link to that below this video. When I post this video, I just in the comment box, you might just post a link to that. Because your experience of doing this, Rudi, and taking the animations and taking the visual aspect of this makes it so easy. And like I said, for years, I popped in and out of it because there were certain documentaries I wanted to follow if I wanted to, like with Deakin or any of these great speakers, just to log on, because I'd always find a ton of videos and stuff, and you have the art. Okay, so let's put a link up there afterwards and we can talk about that. So I'm going to ask you a question because it popped into my head, because I have been mushing about this, and I said it was okay to get a bit mushy about the post afterwards. It was, you're not getting off the hook that end, you know. But the subject of love, you know, is my favorite subject in the world, and I find that all these conversations tend to eventually find themselves in this particular space. And I did remark that in the post that the obvious warmth and love and affection and connection that works between you is evident and is felt by me in my own presence when I'm with you. And I said that the moment that I met you, there was something that clicked for me. So I'm going to ask you, what does love mean? That's a good question now. What does love mean to you? What's your understanding of it?
Oh gosh. To me, love is not just a human emotion, but it's communication to this essence, of this life essence. It's the language that speaks to the world. It's that non-phonetic communication. It's the seasons of the year. It's the grittiness of life, birthing the smooth. It's all encompassing. It's what makes the world go round.
I think, this does sound really bizarre, so bear with me, but as pure consciousness humaning, you're Billying, Jules is Julesing, I'm Rudying, within this perception of a human experience, we feel it as an emotion within our bodies, as chemicals running through and endorphins, but it's much more than that. It's not a thought. It can't be captured in thought, but it allows us to think. It's the force spinning galaxies, rotating subatomic particles. It's the power making us alive right now, making us aware. It's before time, space, and matter, but creates time, space, and matter. There's nothing that it isn't. And it's the great mystery, and it's the great allness, and the isness, and the before and the afterness outside of time. I think the reason I say that is the direct experience that we've had and I've had of love has been edgeless, boundless, unconditional, and completely indescribable, even though I'm trying to describe it now. It's nothing that you can put into words, even though, again, we're trying to put it into words.
Love is the end of separation.
Doesn't get bottled.
Right.
It doesn't get bottled.
Yeah.
It is the end of separation. What do you mean by that, Jules?
When I had that experience, I saw that I went back to court the next day and I saw that this scary opposing party was just me in a different form, me in a different expression, just different perceptions of this love, different perceptions of this consciousness. There's no separation. And that to me is love.
Mm. In the absence of thought, you
Yeah.
know, it's something. When this conversation I find comes on with clients or whatever, and they ask this, I have difficulty trying to describe it. It's something that everybody knows, but it has no language. So the only thing I can ever say is that when whatever is going on for you that looks like it's limiting your experience, or there's anxiety or stress or worry or whatever, in the absence of that, what's left? What's left? You know, is that rising
Mm-hmm.
sense within us of love is ultimately the answer to it. I see it, but I just see it as in the absence of everything else. What happens when you're not upset? What happens when you're not anxious? What happens when you're not worried? What happens when you're okay? What happens? Everything becomes okay. It's what love is. It's
Right.
just unconditional.
Yeah.
Because I'm asking the questions today and I'm really enjoying it, I have to say. It's nice to be on the other side of the camera, watching the two of you in action. To use the word unconditional to describe love, could you speak about that?
Mm. See, Rudi.
Sure. So unconditional doesn't see some people as special and other people's not as special. It doesn't prefer this and not that. As humans, yes, we have preferences, of course, but the fact of love, it's unconditional, meaning there's no conditions it can't handle. And it is so unconditional that it can't see a separation from itself. Now, Sid Banks said that thought is the divine rudder that we navigate life with. Love thinks up and gives us individually the free will to think. And that thought works in duality, in a me and a you, and a here and a there, and a now and a then. And within the duality of the tool of thought, we get to have experience and navigate the human experience. But the essence allowing us to think, that one essence allowing the seemingly two, it is completely unconditional. I remember an experience I had many years ago, and I've kind of spoken about it before, but very briefly. I was an atheist. I did not believe in anything spiritual, very anti-religious. Felt I was broken from this very traumatic childhood that I'd had, and thought I was never going to be okay again. And I thought the world was totally messed up, and why would I want to bring kids into this aggressive, horrible world? That was the belief systems that was running through me at the time. And then one spontaneous dissolving or insight later, and I remember I was hearing somebody cry. Someone was weeping, weeping, and weeping, and my heart went out. And then I realized it was me. Like, I was making the sound, and the weeping that was happening wasn't sadness. It was my physical body could not take the sheer unconditionality, the majesty, the benignness, the unconditional loveness of this power, this force, this nature, this God, if you will, behind and of everything. And it blew my heart open. And all of a sudden, I realized I wasn't alone. There's no separation, but we create separation, and that's needed to have a human experience. No thought of separation, no experience. You just be the one consciousness with no identity. So I holistically saw that it was all necessary. And that's really what I've been doing since that. That was 27 years ago now that experience happened. And I've just been trying to get more articulate, being able to explain it. But again, people can listen to this. Just to back up, Jules's fiance died in a car crash. Her daughter died in a car crash. Her son was taken in custody battle. You didn't have the easiest childhood by far. I had what psychologists would call deep trauma, and growing up, I remember being at school, I was so in fear and terrified and traumatized, I couldn't take any information in because it was just this swell. And my mind didn't kick in until I was about 19. And then I started learning stuff. But that's another story. So we're not just saying, oh, love is beautiful and it's also benign. Like, we've had the hard knocks of life ourselves. Both my parents have passed away. Like, we know what it's like to be in the human experience here. But there is still, regardless of what happens to you, there's something that's flowing through you. And that's what we're talking about. And my word for that is love. It's before who you are, what you've done, what you will do. It's before your identity, but it also creates your identity. And it's all holistically perfect, just as it is.
For many, for me, I find that incredibly inspiring. And like you say, the purpose of this is pointing people back to that no matter how far it appears to us that we seem to have gone, that in essence, when we begin to see it, and personally for me, there was a couple of events, as you were talking about, and I spoke about this recently in another document about being bullied at school and the violence that happened in my life at a very young age from certain teachers, and then with a guy later on in my teens, and it caused a breakdown at 19, and all that stuff that went on, that in that story, the apparent hopelessness of it, that there is a moment that, for those of us that are fortunate enough, we can just hear something in that given moment. But this isn't unique to you or Jules or me or to anything. This is the innate resilience of every human being.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this is the innate resilience of this. And I'd love if you would speak a bit more about this, about what the term innate resilience means, because I know we're describing it, but maybe broaden the subject itself.
So when we say the word innate really to us means this natural, inbuilt, born with capacity that's not just in some of us, but within every single person. And going around the world and filming and interviewing people, I've seen a number of prison inmates who were labeled as being sociopaths, incapable of empathy. This is on their rap sheet. And I've seen them become the most loving, empathic people you can imagine. Why and how? Because when someone has had such horrific conditioning, it misaligns them so much that they do stuff to harm other people. When that's unconditioned, they return home. You can imagine like a bungee cord, this essence, this power, this force, this God, this universal mind is like this anchor, this unbreakable anchor. And what happens is a bungee cord we're still part of this whole, but we think we're not. And so we go off apparently outside, but this bungee cord pulls us back. Now, what happens, conditioning can kind of like get in the way of the bungee cord, and we can think we're this rather than that. And in this otherness, in this not usness, as the conditioning is removed, we immediately buoying back to our innate essence. And again, I've seen this with thousands of people all over the world. In fact, one guy I was talking at a conference in Spain 2 years ago, and this big Norwegian guy comes up to me, just walks up and gives me a bear hug. Didn't even know who he was. And he kind of claps me on the shoulder, like Thor slapping you on the shoulder, like, oh. And he goes, you're the Three Principled Movies guy. And he said he's been watching the videos on the site, and he went from being agoraphobic, like he hadn't left the house. And how long did he say? Like,
he didn't say.
Like a long time.
Years.
Yeah, years and years and years. Didn't have a life, depressed. And then as he was watching the videos, he realized meanings having real eyes. You see what's true. And he saw what was true. And what true wasn't the conditioning and the identity that was created, although, you know, there's truth in that if you believe it, obviously. But he saw he was what was before, and he wasn't broken apart from the thought that he was broken. The power of thought is that thought looks true even when it isn't. And he's believing his thinking to be true about himself, rather than realizing he was the space that thought arises within. So he had a change of identity. And in that moment, he threw open the curtains and walked outside, and he was with his beautiful partner. He's enjoying life. He was living where before he was just surviving. Now, this isn't unique to him or us or me or you. It's within, because resilience is it's the lifeblood of the universe. Just look outside, how trees recover, how the ozone's healing up, how, like with the Gulf War, they was that 20 years ago or something. They said that it's a complete environmental catastrophe. It will never recover. 2 years later, BBC went out there and filmed, and it's like nothing ever happened. Yeah. Nature is resilient. We are nature in human form.
Resilience is something. So you see in that gentleman and in us, you see a physical change. You see physical change everywhere, but there's something non-physical. There's something deeper, and that's the resilience. The non-physical, consistent resilience. It's always there. That which never changes.
Yeah. Sorry, Jules.
Oh, I just said it just gets covered over.
Okay. That example, we'll say, of the agoraphobia, you know, is a real world example of literally what we're talking about. The moment that he saw something and he began to realize that I'm not agoraphobic, or I'm agoraphobic, is not a thing. It's not a thing. You know, it's not an object. I am agoraphobic. Makes no sense. The moment that you recognize that there is no such thing as agoraphobic, and what appeared to me as an illusion of the thought of I'm agoraphobic kept him indoors. And the moment he realized that, well, wait a second, if this is being made up, this agoraphobic idea, what does that mean? It means the absence of agoraphobia.
Yeah. His words, Billy, was that I think he said something like this. He realized he wasn't agoraphobic. He was having agoraphobic thoughts, like fearful thoughts. And so he was buying into his thoughts as himself and then acting on it. And that's such a human thing to do. We all do that. I do that too. So he started to differentiate his spiritual nature or his essence from the thought. And so we're not saying that mental conditions don't exist. We're just saying that mental conditions can only be experienced as a thought. Thoughts of anxiety, thoughts of fear, thoughts of worry, you know, traumatic thoughts. That is very, very real for people. We're not saying they don't exist. It definitely does exist. What we're saying is that as we realize that we're the space that thoughts flow through rather than we are the thoughts, we get a different perspective on who we are, like our identity changes to that deeper source. And from that deeper source, the impossible becomes possible.
Beyond the limits of it.
Yeah.
It's something that has been, for me, if I'm to, and I've mentioned this a couple of times, for anybody that has a business that has to close it either temporarily or over, or permanently, it can be a very traumatic time in the sense that, I had staff I had to let go, I had to do all the legal and financial aspect of it and close down the business. And there is this whole, oh my God, this is my worst nightmare. I'm having to close my business. And and I remember putting up a post just to say that I'm going to be closed because of COVID-19 for the foreseeable future. And I was very emotional doing it because I understand, for me, this was such a big thing for me. Even my brother sent me a message afterwards and said, are you okay, buddy? Do you want to talk? Because for me, it was that sense of a nightmare that I was living through. And the one thing that I knew was that if I let this be the nightmare that it is, flushing through my system, it'll pass. Because the only thing I needed to know in that given moment was that this is what the experience is like. For years and years and years and years, I've had this conditioning of running my business, and this has been my life. This is what, and Dominic Scafidi just put it so beautifully. He says, we create a reality, and then we get up every day and we recreate that reality over and over and over and over. And I thought it was such a succinct way of describing what we do every day. And then one day, we're not creating that reality anymore, and suddenly we're tossed on the waves, and we get that emotional bouncing up and down. And for me, the realization afterwards, after a couple of days, that this actually isn't my worst nightmare. It felt like it. I certainly believed it on the Tuesday when I had to close the salon, and for me, it appeared very, very real.
Yeah.
It appeared very real. But just all I needed to know in that given moment was I'm going to experience this exactly the way it's unfolding for one reason only. I know this is what's playing out. I've had this thinking, I've had this whole reality created that's now shifting. And the nightmare that appeared to be was that reality shifting into an entirely new possibility. It took a couple of days. It took a couple of days for everything to settle down. But knowing that I'm going to be okay was the only thing that I needed to know at the time.
Right.
And what we're talking about here is just because we get an understanding or we see the value of the principles and how our experience is being created, doesn't mean that we're not going to get tossed around. Like Sid said, life is a contact sport. We are going to take the knocks. Stuff is going to happen, you're going to run into blocks along the way, business may not go your way, or a relationship may break down, or stuff happens all the time. Life is happening all of the time. It is the dynamic thing. And thought is dynamic with it because that's how we experience it.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that we won't recover. It doesn't mean that the essence of who we are, the moment that we see what's going on for ourselves, just is okay. It's okay. And when you're talking about like I had the nightmare story, like your man had the agoraphobia, this is a nightmare. And then I saw it wasn't a nightmare. And then I allowed it all settle down, and all of this wonderful stuff started to happen. Then all these wonderful conversations and all the different things started to happen because the possibility of creation appears.
Yes,
beautiful, Billy.
I like that.
The possibility. That's how, and that would be the living essence of what I think what we're pointing to is that we may run up against things and events and clearly traumatic events for any of the three that are talking about this along the way, doesn't mean that there isn't something else.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that in the moment that we get to see it, there's a possibility of creation. Possibility of love.
It's beautiful.
It is. It really, really is. I'm conscious of the time. I think we're up in the half hour. I'm not sure. Rudi, before we go, I would very much like to just talk about the Innate Evolution website. Talk about the resource that you've created there. Because anybody that hasn't been introduced to the principles, that are listening to these and want to find more information about what we're talking about, Rudi and Jules have this incredible resource on innateevolution.com.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I just please, Rudi, put your plug in by all means, because it's a fantastic resource and everybody should get a chance to visit this if they want to get a deeper understanding of what we're talking about.
Oh, sure. Okay, sure. Thanks, Billy. So if you go to Innate Evolution, or Evolution if you're American, .com, and in the navigation there's Start Here. So click Start Here, and that's a 12-part animation series around this understanding, kind of from top to bottom, what it is, what it isn't, how it works, how we create experience, that spiritual nature within everyone that we're kind of talking about. So definitely go there.
Yeah, we just released that last night.
We did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've been working on it for a while, so we're really pleased with that one. And you can actually click the IETV, that's in the navigation, and that's lots of videos of myself and Jules. And one of them, we're talking more about consciousness and love. Another one, we've got Friday night lives where people write in every week and ask, like one of them was, how do you deal with blood-sucking life vampires? Meaning like people who are negative. So we talk about that, anxiety, how you're not broken, just all of these kind of things, rumination, peace of mind, meditative mind, all those kind of topics we talk about in under 10 minutes. And you can find out more about the 3 principles. We talk about that in there as well. Or you can go to 3P Movies in the navigation, and that is the resource that I co-created about 10 years ago with documentaries on the communities that went from the 4th to 0 homicides in the world. It's got information, facilitated interviews, and Billy, you're going to be up there soon in the facilitated interviews. So we'll let you know when that comes out. And so there's probably, crikey, nearly 1,000 different free videos on Innate Evolution. So
we're doing with Dominic. You had Dominic on just a few, I think last week, Dominic Scafadini. We're doing an event with him, Nature's Mind, where we go a little bit deeper. It's a deep dive into this innate essence, that which never changes. And
powers of creation.
And the powers of creation, of course. You got to get Dominic, so he's going to talk about.
He's just awesome, that fellas.
Yeah. So that's coming up too.
He's bursting with enthusiasm, you know. He's just, but it's so well tempered. And grounded and practical, and I you know, he's taken this into such a huge environment of industry and banking and corporate and stuff. And I can only imagine the implications, I would say the impact that Dominic is having on these people. Because
so we're putting it.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, I know. I'm so excited. We're so excited about
that. There you go,
so
Dominic Scafidi. If you're watching this, you're after getting a plug, buddy. Rudi and Jules, thank you both so much for taking this time out. To everybody else, we apologize that we couldn't do this live, but thank you all. Thank you both, and thank you everybody for taking the time out to join us and join in this conversation. Much love to you all, and before you go, we have Grandma Love on tomorrow. We have the wonderful Laurie Holmes on for the conversation tomorrow. So everybody, you're welcome to join us. It'll be at the regular time of 4 o'clock tomorrow. In the meantime, Rudi and Jules, thank you so much.